Start at this time.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I'm calling this meeting to order. A special board meeting of the directors, although we don't have a quorum. So let's go ahead. Why don't we have staff determine a quorum, please?
We'll do Director Houston, and I'll go ahead and do a roll call, starting with yourself. Director Houston?
I'm here.
Director Deere? Director Alvarez? Director Gray? Director Williams? Okay, so it appears that we have one board member present, so the floor is yours, Director Houston.
Okay, so with that, everything here is informational, so there's no actions to be taken. I'll just go ahead and move into the next portion. And I do, for what it's worth, I want to apologize to everybody in the meeting that I'm the only one here. But going forward, I would like to see, do we have any members of the public who wish to speak at this time, Greg?
Okay, and we do have a room full of staff and guests from other agencies. And so let me just take a moment to ask if anyone here present would like to make a comment, a public comment. Okay, and then on the platform, no one here in the room would like to make a comment, but let's ask on the public platform if there's anyone who would like to make a comment, and do so by raising your hand on the platform. And it does not appear anyone is raising their hand. So it appears that there are no public comments at this time, Director.
Okay, great. And I do also, I guess I should apologize. Is there just a way that we could have a quick round of introductions, or if someone can read off who's here, if you will?
Absolutely. So maybe we'll start here in the room. So perhaps, and maybe Julie, if you can help me with that.
Certainly, we've done that in the past. So first, welcome everybody here to our first in-person caucus meeting. Thank you for coming out. We appreciate you being here. My name is Julie Frazier-Matthews, Manager of Administration and Board Secretary for West Basin. So this way.
Yes, thank you very much to everybody that's here. EJ Caldwell, West Basin Municipal Water District Assistant General Manager.
Robert Storchel, I'm Conservation Representative for California American Waters, Los Angeles District.
Alex Heidi with Municipal Water District, Orange County.
Nikki Petrov with the City of Manhattan Beach Senior Management Analyst.
Jennifer Vasquez, West Basin.
Marianne Rexroad, West Basin Municipal Water District, Manager of Finance.
Margaret Mochi, West Basin.
Gus Meza with West Basin.
Anatole Falligan with Long Beach Water.
Anastasia Symes, I'm the Public Works Director at the City of Palos Verdes Estates. Wendy Nakamura, West Basin Finance.
I'm Chris Helm. I'm a consultant with West Basin.
And Tammy Hurley-Kai with West Basin.
Ralph Felix, District Manager, Cal Water. Barca Masroyan, West Basin.
Michelle Green, West Basin.
Amy Rocha, West Basin.
Okay, that brings it back to me, Greg Reed, General Manager of West Basin. And I also want to echo Julie's appreciation for everyone who took the time to join us here in person for our first hybrid West Basin caucus. So thank you all for joining us today. Back to you, Director Houston.
Sure, great. Thank you very much. I know there's other people who are online. I see Director Catherman from WRD. And I can't go through the whole list of everybody. So if there's any electeds or other directors here that I need to be called out upon, just let me know, staff. But in the meantime, I do want to be cognizant of our time. I'm glad to hear all the folks who are down there in person. I'm sorry I couldn't come down there. And of course, some of you I haven't had the opportunity to meet yet in person. So the one time I'm out, you guys are in. But eventually we will see each other in person. So with that, I know that we have a very special guest with us here to speak. And so I definitely want to give that time and the floor. So Greg, if you'll go ahead and help us to move into the next item, please, discussion.
Absolutely, Director Houston. And it's my great pleasure to introduce the General Manager of Metropolitan Water Districts of Southern California, my friend and colleague, Mr. Adel Hashgalil. Adele is here to talk with us on the topic of the business plan for Metropolitan, and also to open up in the next item a Q&A and just open discussion with the general manager. And so I want to encourage everyone here in the room and online to make this as an engaging discussion as we all can. A lot of important considerations for our area, especially when you talk about the Colorado River Aqueduct and the conditions there, as well as, maybe other important priorities and programs that Adele can speak so adeptly towards. So with that, without further ado, we will turn the floor over to Adele Hospital.
Great, Vice President Houston, Greg, thank you very much for having me. Thank you, West Basin, for the invitation. Sorry, I couldn't be with you in person, but hopefully soon, and appreciate the opportunity. Today, what I'll do is actually, I'm looking forward to the input and the discussion, but let me start the discussion by what I presented to my board a few months ago is the business plan for the GM for Metropolitan for year 22-23, and I'll ask Martin Schlager, who is with me from my team, to share the presentation if it's okay. Martin.
Yeah, I had
Okay.
sharing. There we go. I've got it again. Thank you. Let me pull this up.
But I want to just acknowledge the partnership with West Basin. I want to acknowledge, Greg, EJ. Thank you, EJ, for your work in the transition. You've been amazing to work with. But also, I want to thank Chairwoman Gray for her leadership in Metropolitan for the last 4 years, and her service to Metropolitan as the chairwoman of the board and as a board member, in addition to Director Williams being also a board member. Next slide. My first year in Metropolitan, I've been here a year and a half, and has been, I think, a very successful, productive year. I'm very proud of the accomplishments that we have made. The challenges and the opportunities we have before us are transformational. It would be negligent to present a business plan that does not look at the challenges ahead of us. I also believe that being strategic and proactive, we can seize on the opportunity that comes with the crisis. Next slide. We have experienced unprecedented challenges, historic drought, the first ever Colorado River shortage declaration, and most recently you've heard the discussions in the press and through the Bureau of Reclamation about the need to cut the water from Lake Mead by 2 to 4 million acre feet to help protect Lake Powell and Lake Mead. That's a huge cut. And as you know, we've offered as California 400,000 acre feet of cuts. We're still working through the process and how we come to an agreement to ensure moving forward. This is the first time also in our history that State Water Project to have almost 3 years of consecutive drought and also 21-22 had 5% allocation. We have a huge challenge before us where 6 million people on the west end of our region were close to losing their water by the end of the year. The state audit raised some major issues about workplace concerns and EO issues that we had to deal with. Impacts of the climate change and changing climate. We're seeing conditions that we haven't seen before. The water that we used to see coming from the rainfall around the Colorado River are not making it. Even with a 90% normal rain precipitation, we're seeing 30% of runoff making it to the river and the reservoirs. Similarly, up in the Sierras, we're seeing the snowpack is diminishing, evaporating quickly because of the heat and not making it to the rivers that we have. An example, last year around December, we had about 140% of the snowpack normal in the snowpack. You forward to April with extreme heat, that went down to almost 40%. So we can't rely on the snowpack, and we need to find new ways. We had some long-standing budget issues, loss of water stewardship fund, historic rates of inflation, and rate pressures on all the agencies that we are working for and working with. We had to make some major repairs to the system. Many of our system is 80 years old and needs to be addressed. And you saw recently the repairs we did on the upper feeder in Riverside, where we had to take 3 million people and put them under emergency water conditions to allow us to do the repairs, which we did ahead of schedule under very difficult conditions, and we're able to do that with your help and the help of our member agencies across the board. While any one of these challenges could be enough to keep somebody busy, an agency busy for years, I was faced with many of them at the same day coming into Metropolitan. We're faced with it as a whole. We need to work through them. And I'm proud that we've made some major progress moving forward. Next slide. So for us to really address these challenges that we talked about, there is an opportunity to really chart us into the future. It requires everyone to come together. We need to create a culture of innovation, integration, and inclusion, building on strong foundation of Metropolitan when it was created back in 28, which is the co-op coming together and working for every member agency with no one left behind. Where every voice is heard and no one is not left out, whether it's at the board level, at the member agencies, the employees, we really need to make sure that everybody is included and the voices of everyone is included. And we work really hard to ensure that's the case. We've accomplished a lot. We work to bring the board members, the agencies together through a number of retreats. We restructured the monthly meeting with the member agencies to have it occur before the board meeting, 2 weeks before the board meeting, to allow for significant input and the ability to influence the agenda moving forward to the board. I visited every facility, every member agency, and I tried to really hard to understand the challenges, the conditions from the employees, from the member agencies, my partners, and figure out how we can move forward. I've held meetings with the workforce in person and in Zoom, and really opened the door for open dialogue of how we can move forward. Engage key interest by creating listening sessions around the climate action plan and the drought response. We work closely with our external partners, the tribes, the environmental advocates, the business partners. We've reached out to everyone to really rebuild the relationship, because we all can't do it alone. We need to work together. I've really worked hard to strengthen the relationship with the governor and the governor's office to ensure, and the other water agencies up and down California, and also along the watershed in the Colorado River. And we really translated and make sure that everybody knows the urgency that we have and the need for us to work together. You know, addressing the state water project dependent areas was a high priority for us. It's the issue is how can we ensure resiliency across the entire region. We work together on coming up with ideas, projects, even declaring the emergency on conservation, and we're able to really provide options for the member agencies impacted, and give them either the allocation option or the banning of turf watering, except for 2 days a week. We also identified the need for $50 million in the state budget, and the good news, we got a earmark for us that we will receive in that $50 million to help with the conveyance enhancement. probably the first time we've had a earmark allocation directly from the budget. I really worked hard on really expediting the recycled water program, especially Pure Water Southern California, in partnership with LA County sanitation districts. And we worked hard on getting a bill in less than a year. We're able to get AB 1845, Alternative Project Delivery, introduced, passes through the legislator, and then signed by the governor into law to give Metropolitan the ability to accelerate this delivery of the project. Also, we help secure authorization for the large recycled water funding from the federal infrastructure funding and bill. We're able to create $450 million in funding in the Infrastructure Investment Act for the next 5 years. We believe this month we should be receiving the rules of how the money will be dispersed. Also, we worked really hard on being part of the $4 billion for the Inflation Reduction Act to really help us in this region qualify for that funding. So urban conservation and turf removal is part of that $4 billion that was put on the table. We also received $80 million in funding, earmark funding from the state budget, signed by the governor directly into Metropolitan to help accelerate the work on the recycled water project. That effort was a collaborative effort. We worked across the board with our labor partners, business partners, member agencies, water agencies, environmental groups. There was a broad support for funding to really accelerate this work. And the hope is that we'll create delivery for that water in the next, by 2028, while we're building the project. And that's where really West Basin comes in, our partners around West Basin. We're actually meeting as part of a regional collaboration. We have a meeting coming up on the 17th. But what we're trying to do is find the opportunity to find areas of demand in the vicinity of Carson where it's using potable water that we can offset that with recycled water. And with your help and the help of our partners in LA and WRD, Central Basin, West Basin, and others, we came up with close to 40,000 acre feet that we can actually deliver by 2028. And that's a great accomplishment. But the collaboration will continue. We're looking for opportunities to how we can accelerate and collaborate on building, expanding the recycled water program and distribution. Climate action plan was put in place that has been approved by the board to establish carbon neutrality by 2045. And we're really working hard on implementing it. And I have a chief resiliency, sustainability, and innovation officer leading this effort, Liz Crossan, that is helping me make this into a reality. We've heard from the board members and member agencies about that change is needed. The time to do it is now. What I call it, this is a Mulholland moment for all of us to really move it. And we need to do change because the same old playbook that we used before cannot be used for the next 100 years. So this is a chance. I think it's a chance in our lifetime to really transform the future. And together, I think we can really chart a path forward to a resilient water future for everyone with no one left behind. And this is the time to do it. Next slide. So what we tried to develop is a strategic priorities, and it provides a roadmap that we developed to implement the changes that are identified by our board in April. It comments on our core activities on delivering water. Changes will make stronger organization to better fulfill the mission. It's different from the past. There are not categories that cover everything we do, but focus on goals that transform the organization. Let me go through it quickly. Next slide. So these are the 5, what I call anchors, principles, priorities. They empowering the workforce and promote diversity, equity, and inclusion. Sustain Metropolitan's mission with a strengthened business model. Adapt to changing climate and water resources. Protect public health, the regional economy, and Metropolitan's assets. Partner with interested parties and the communities we serve. These are critical because these are the foundation, the pillars for our strategic plan and how we're moving forward with the business plan. Next slide. So these outcomes and cannot be done without accountability. And I'm working with the executive team and the management on tracking and ensuring delivery of these goals and these outcomes. It allows the executive team to track and monitor progress. So we have the goals, but also we have the outcomes that we are tracking. So it fits my management style of communication, integration, and support. And these are, go next slide, go ahead. So we have 5 priority areas, 10 goals, 49 outcomes, and more than 75 target measures. The priorities and the 10 goals are what we focus on with the board, but the rest of the outcomes and the target measures are measured regularly and reported on by the group managers and the leadership in the organization. I report the progress on the goals and the priorities to the board as part of my monthly report to the board. Next slide. Let me walk through each one of these quickly. So the first goal is build a safe, inclusive, and accountable workplace. You recognize the accomplishments here, establishing the EO office and DEI office, implement the state audit, implementation of recommendation is on schedule. We did the second submittal to the state audit recently, and we're meeting the goals. We've done almost 90% of the recommendations, and those are moving and as part of the progress that we're doing. Next slide. Expanding training and skill development, update the strategies to recruit and retain diverse workforce. That's critical. And one of the things I'm very proud of is the recent action by the board to approve the project labor agreement, which is the largest project labor agreement, I think, in history, with 60% of the workforce identified as local workforce, and 15% of the workforce is workforce at risk. That means hiring from the community, from veterans, homeless community, people that needed a second chance. And those are critical. And then also working across our communities with focus on disadvantaged communities and ensure that there is work resource centers tapping into those communities that are in most need to help uplift our communities. Because I believe what we do here is not just about water, it's not about the infrastructure, it's about people and how we take care of people. Next slide. Conduct a review of the rate structure and the business model. You know, this is really critical as we are dealing with how can we achieve resiliency while maintaining affordability. That's a huge question. And we're hoping to continue working with our board to find new ways to generate revenue. The grant funding that we received is helping us. We're looking for ways to tap into the state funding and be the path forward to give money to our member agencies, especially in the area of turf removal. But also, we need to find new ways to sustain the investments while ensuring that the cost of water does not become so difficult for communities to accept. We saw that in our budget process recently, and our goal is to figure out alternatives and ideas through this collaborative discussion that we will have. Next slide. Managing our rates and pressure and ensuring that we are working hard on focusing and ensuring efficiencies in how we invest money and how we track money and prioritizing our investments in such a way that we can minimize the rate pressure on our ratepayers, but also ensure efficiency. As you know, we developed a budget that was a minimal increase, 5% increase. But really, one of the goals is to track it and ensure that we continue reviewing the expenditures and what we do, but also looking for ways to monetize our assets, maybe selling some properties that are no longer needed, reinvesting and bringing energy. We're looking at sequestration, carbon sequestration in our Delta Islands. All these things are on the table. And we refinance some of our debt for a savings of close to $103 million over time. And also tapping into the federal and state funding that we're very successful in, at least for the beginning, getting $130 million from the state, but hopefully a lot more from the federal government and the investments we're getting. Next slide. This is something that's critical to me and what I heard from the board. MET should be for you, for your member agencies. You should not feel on your own. We're here to support you. That's the reason for the regional collaboration. So we're going to provide member agencies the equivalent level of water supply reliability across the board. What we learned a lot from the state water project dependent areas and what experience we went through. And our goal is to ensure that we plan for the future to address this. We're also working hard on non-functional turf. As you know, the board adopted some resolution to encourage everyone to adopt ordinances to address non-functional turf. And we're trying to figure out how we can access the $75 million that was recently announced last week, I believe, by the Department of Water Resources on drought relief with focus on turf replacement. So we're trying to find a way to how we can all work together to access that money and in a quick, easy way and ensure accessibility to it by everyone. Next slide. This is the One Water vision, and I believe strongly in that One Water vision that I want to support and continue advancing long-term reliability and resilience for the region. And those are things that we are working really hard right now on how we ensure that we have reliable water supply through alternative storage options, recycled water, and creating new water options. Last week, I was up in Kern County and Antelope Valley to look at the AVAC storage. It's under construction. It's going to help us store water, but also finding ways to utilize the available storage that we have in our basins here to, when we have water, we can store it. So when we have dry conditions, we're not going to suffer. And storage, alternative conveyance, new treatment, local water capture, treatment, recycling of every drop, but also looking for other alternatives if needed, such as desal as an option. Next slide. We need to proactively identify, assess, and reduce potential vulnerabilities and risk. And that's something our engineering team is doing really well in assessing. I had a briefing yesterday on the assessment of the Colorado River aqueduct and how we are really prioritizing our investments for repairs and the maintenance to ensure the system is running. We so much relied on it for the last 2 years, running it at full capacity that we need to make sure it's in good condition to serve us well. And next, I think February, we'll do our regular shutdown for maintenance, which is great effort. Next slide. Innovation. These are the new ideas that we're trying to find ways that we can move forward on how we address our needs in metropolitan, finding new technologies, sustainable ways of doing business. We need to stay on the edge of technology and be leader in this effort. We're partnering with everyone to find ways to help us reduce evaporation. I was down in Bard Water District down by Yuma, and it's amazing the partnership we have with them on fallowing. They use some of that money to line their canals to reduce loss of water, which to me is very innovative. And they use technology to optimize delivery of water. And we gotta look for ways to cover maybe some of these canals and reduce evaporation, and maybe use some solar panel coverage to help generate energy. And we're looking also at our facilities up in Palo Verde and other places to see if there's ways we can utilize some of the land to help us generate energy and power to help us financially also reduce our costs. Next slide. We can't move forward with that partnership collaboration, and we need to continue working together and really finding ways to grow the partnership, to build stronger relationships with everyone. Last week, I was up making a presentation to the Delta Stewardship Council to really make them see how Metropolitan and Southern California and its member agencies are working really hard to reduce our dependence on imported water, to make it resilient. But we can't do it alone. We need their support, and they have committed to working with us as we move forward towards a future of resiliency and addressing the climate change that we're facing. Next slide. And this is very important, underserved communities to many of you and many of our member agencies, because we cannot leave smaller water agencies alone. We can't leave the tribes alone. We need to always include people. And I talked a little bit about how we can help technically apply for grants to help smaller communities that don't have the capacity to apply for grants. I'll tell you one example is this recent $75 million grant availability for turf removal. The minimum that you can get is $4 million. And some agencies do not have the turf for a $4 million capacity, so they can't qualify for the grant application. So what I'm thinking about is how can we all collaborate to apply on behalf of everyone, and then help distribute the money where the needs are, and helping the smaller communities get their share without being left behind. And we signed a major agreement on infrastructure collaboration with a number of agencies across the nation, and working with the federal government on equity and infrastructure pledge, which includes removing the obstacles for smaller businesses to participate. But our PLA program is going to be the flag, where the North Star that everybody's going to be looking at, that's going to help really invest in smaller communities and disadvantaged communities. Next slide. So I do this regularly now as part of my monthly report that I submit to the board. I report on the progress and highlight the areas in the strategic priorities. And I ensure that the information that's available is provided to the board with look ahead for future board meetings, reflections of what we've learned. And also we try to really put executive summary to minimize people have to do a lot of reading, and we can really capture where we are. And that's something that we worked really hard to improve how we report to the board and to the member agencies. Next slide. Collaboration, we all know it's a two-way communication with everyone. And to me, I'm committed as a partner to you, to every member agency, to every small and large agency. We're here to work together. And my goal to you is to ensure that your issues are addressed, looked at, considered, and included into our programs. And that's why I really appreciate Greg and his leadership coming in. He really, exemplifies collaboration, and I really appreciate his openness. We will have a new leadership at the board coming January, and we will continue this effort that we started to get together to ensure we agree on how we move forward. My job is to take direction from the board and implement the policies by the board, and that is reflective of your, as a member agency, policies and direction. I really rely and respect all the general managers in the 26 member agencies we have. I appreciate their leadership, their review, and I think we've really built a great team. And team is not just metropolitan; the team is all of us in Southern California that really have the same goal in mind, which is uplifting communities and providing reliable, safe, and resilient water future for everyone. I look forward to continuing to work with each and every one of you, and I'm really excited about the opportunity to serve you and serve the region and serve the Southwest for hopefully a few years to come, more years to come. Thank you very much.
All right, very good. Thank you, Adele, for that update. And I'm going to open it up to questions here in 1 second. I just wanted to say while I was on here, I could see there were a couple people I want to make sure I acknowledge. So I know I acknowledged Director Catherman from WRD, but also I see Director Joy Langford is on this call, and Director Lefebvre is on here as well. So I may have missed somebody, but those are the other folks I saw here. Here's what I'm going to do just to help, because I'm not physically there. Greg, if you want to help facilitate some of the Q&A, I definitely have a question and a comment toward the end, but if you all can facilitate that for a little bit here. Well, that is our item 2, letter B. Okay, so we'll go into that. And Greg, if you can help me out there, that would be great.
Absolutely, Director Houston. And so again, I want to encourage, everyone here in the room to take advantage of the time we have with General Manager Adele Hochfeld. And so if you have thoughts to share or questions to ask, don't hesitate to raise your hand and we could acknowledge you and have the conversation started, now. And same for all of us who are online, on the virtual platform. Perhaps you could either raise your hand or maybe just, start to speak and we could acknowledge you and then go ahead and chime in and we could just get a conversation started here. So anyone here in the room who would like to maybe raise a question or share a thought or two?
Right.
Yeah, Greg,
Yes.
Rob Catherman. Hey, Adele, how you doing?
Hey, Rob, how are you?
So clarify for me the first tranche of water out of your pure water project. Now you said 40 MGD, is that correct?
It's 40,000 acre feet. Yeah, it's close.
Or acre, okay, or acre feet, yeah. Either way, okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
So, yeah, the discussion we're having is across West Basin, other, WRD is part of it. There's an LADWP, and we've been having, so we need to confirm the numbers. That's the homework we're doing. But my goal is, as I'm building the project, we want to deliver water quickly while we are expanding our system north and northeast and hopefully northwest too.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, I'm not seeing any immediate questions or comments here in the room or on the platform, but I'll just chime in with my own. I'm sorry. Alex. Okay, please.
Hey, Dale, this
Alex
is
from Orange County Water District.
Municipal Water District of Orange County. Hi, Adele, you had talked about the expedition of the Pure Water program, which I think is great and would be especially good for the area around kind of the West Basin, Central Basin area. One of the things that we haven't necessarily discussed as member agencies is kind of the financial model behind that and how that project gets paid for. And I know we've been waiting for, I think, a white paper on that piece. Do you imagine that this business model is going to cover how the financing or payment for that project is going to be, or how do you envision that kind of folding in to the business model?
Yeah, good question. Yes, right now we're doing some analysis on the cost of service, but really it cannot be done without looking at the overall business model. Is, who pays for this? and is it a blended rate? Is it something else that we create? So to me, I really looking forward to the discussion with the board as we do this workshop that initially wanted to have in November. Now we're moving into the first part of the year to have a dialogue as to how we see the ability to invest in resiliency like we're doing with pure water, knowing that our water supply sales are going down. And what we're trying to figure out is how we do this investment recovery of that cost, how you pay for it without while considering affordability. So we're going to have a lot of experts come in. We're going to have a lot of people looking at it. And that's why I was pushing hard on the state and the state budget to invest money upfront in this project to buy us time to figure that out and use the state money to help accelerate the project and move us forward while we're working through the business model and how we all agree to pay for it, because it's going to take some thinking. Is we can do the same as we've done it before, or we can find ways to be creative, and maybe look at how we can incentivize people who are conserving, and then maybe if you're not conserving, there's other things you can do. But those all, I don't want to decide what the board would look at, but my job is to bring the options and hear the board, and those gonna probably take the next part of next year for us to really go over. But I want to kick this off as soon as possible because it's so critical to our investments in infrastructure, in resiliency, and who pays for it and how we pay for it. I just want to allow it to happen because that's critical, and look forward to more dialogue with you. But that's something that's on my table, as you know. I'm pushing it hard to ensure that we have the dialogue and come up with ways that can give us sustainable funding to invest, but at the same time being fair to everyone, right? And this is really how we're going to be doing it.
Thank you.
All right,
Thanks.
thank you, Alex. Do we have any others who might want to raise a question or share a comment? Saying, EJ.
Yes, thank you, Greg. Adele, on goal 2.1, one of the outcomes is to review the local resource program and identify alternative financing models. And I was wondering if you could elaborate on that a little bit, because one of the issues that West Basin has encountered is that Metropolitan Water District has done an excellent job of incentivizing the development of local resources. And if you look prior to the LRP, investing in the production of groundwater. And over time, our situation has changed. Our water quality has changed, that it's costing us more to produce recycled water. And of course, groundwater production in the West Coast Basin is nearly at an all-time low. And I'm wondering what is meant by the review of this program and what you see as the future of it. And if there's an opportunity, is Metropolitan Water District willing to invest in maybe old resources to maintain those resources?
Yeah. So I don't want to, I'll tell you, just looking of what we've done in Metropolitan, working with the member agencies, close to $800 million have been invested in local resource program incentives to create new water. Another 800 million was invested in conservation. We had about 200 million square feet of turf removed and replaced. So we've done a lot of good, and many of the work that has been produced was produced because of the LRP. Also, a lot of agencies went on their own and did their own projects to ensure resiliency. The question that's before us is how we can sustain this to move forward, because the LRP requires most of the investment to be made by that agency. So my whole goal is if you have a member agency that cannot afford to come up the majority of the cost, the LRP model does not help them, right? Because they can't afford it. So now basically the LRP kind of is biased to only folks that can afford to build large projects. And I think that worked well for a while, and we may have to continue that model. But I want to put that before the board to say, is there a better model that can sustain the same investments in local resiliency, or there's other model, or maybe a combination of the two? So I would say that's critical. But the other one that we have so much at stake is ensuring that the systems that we have, I'll tell you the groundwater, for example, in Central Basin and other places. I live in Fullerton, and I know how much Fullerton suffered as a result of having to lose some of the ground wells because of PFAS and get into imported water. Orange County Water District and the folks in Orange County helped fund the investments to build the cleanup that is needed for that. To me, that's the same thing that I think also we should look at is because I have so much at stake in our communities, especially the smaller communities that are dependent on on local water supply. If they lose their facilities to PFAS or to failure of maintenance, I want to find ways that we can help them through a program that Met can be a support, as maybe the other member agencies can help us. I had a discussion with the state officials and state leadership about this idea of big brother, little brother, or big sister, little sister. We're all helping each other. So I really think maintenance is so critical. And some of our smaller water agencies have only a few people to help operate. So we need to figure out how they can continue doing it. So I have not made a decision because that's not my decision. It's the board decision on discussing a lot of these things. And I think we need to put everything on the table and look at the alternative. What can serve better? If the LRP continues to be a good model, maybe that's the right thing to do, or maybe combine it with some other model, or maybe find a new way. But those are discussions I look forward to having, with the board and getting input and direction from the board on how to move forward.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, Del. And, just asking my own question, with the impacts on the Colorado River Aqueduct system and all the work that you're, leading the region on in partnership with the other state agencies, what's your kind of forecast for what we're looking at, regionally here relative to the Colorado River?
It's we're going to have a discussion with the board about similar emergency action, some allocations. When we talk about 2 to 4 million acre feet that has to be cut, a lot of folks are talking about 2 million feet or more, or most of it coming from the lower basin states, and California is one of those. So we offered 400,000 acre feet of contribution to help stop the loss in level of water. But it's something that we have to be smart about and how we do it. We may have to really invest a lot of resources to reduce water consumption, especially on the outdoor. That's why the state is willing to put a lot of money at the table. The federal government want to put a lot of money on the table. That's why we had this effort on non-functional turf and learning from Nevada. We have a lot ahead of us, and it's going to be tough for a while. But that tells us that we need to invest in local water supply, invest in storage. Thank God for Diamond Valley Lake and the investment that was made, because that really is helping us. It's as big as Lake Havasu. That kind of storage, whether it's in Upper San Gabriel, whether it's the Chino Basin, whether it's the Central Basin, whether it's the West Coast Basin, all these basins, and then going upstream along the state water project areas and looking for conjunctive partnership we've had with Arvin Edison, with the Antelope Kern, and looking at maybe Central Valley and some of the discussions. So I think we need to be smarter of how we manage water, but it's going to be a little tough. We all have to kind of tighten the belt a little bit on consumption and use technology and use the rebates and help us ensure that we use the basic amount of water for our livelihood. And as we continue to look for ways to augment our water supply and find new water through recycling, reuse, stormwater capture, there's a lot of work ahead of us. But for now, I think between now and the first part of the year, we'll be talking about some tight allocations across the entire service area, probably, and ensuring that we all conserve, especially focusing on the outdoor. As you know, 50%, a little over 50 to 70%, depends where you are, is consumed by the outdoor usage, and we need to kind of tighten that effort, especially around non-functional turf. We're doing some mapping for the entire service area. By the end of the year, we should map all the areas that have parcels that have non-functional turf in industrial, commercial, and institutional properties. We're hoping that will help all of us focus on these areas to ensure that they're not being watered, first of all, which is against the state's policy and the governor's direction, but also how we can get them to transform these areas into California friendly and less consuming of water. But it's going to be tough ahead of us. But this is an opportunity to dial on every front and put the kind of the foot to the pedal on recycled water and get us moving forward. And I appreciate, Greg, your partnership and your thinking outside the box on this. So A lot of tough issues we have to deal with, but I'm optimistic that we can really get through it and build the infrastructure and resiliency that we all need, because we owe it to everyone for the next 100 years to build the systems and the infrastructure to sustain us. And I think we can do that. Yes.
Thank you for that response, Adele. And, I'll just, kind of build on your message there in that, West Basin, our directors have really leaned in progressively on conservation, and doing everything we can to incentivize our service, our customers within our service territory to remove turf, and all the funding that's being made available in terms of rebates and incentives. But I also want to take a moment to just encourage all of our partners here in West Basin to look at how we can lead by example on non-functional turf and removing those from, being irrigated and transforming, non-functional turf to a California-friendly landscape. And so just doing our part as public agencies and incentivizing our business entities within our service territory to do the same. Because that 50% outdoor usage, it's going to make a difference in terms of the allocation on the Colorado River that's going to come in the next, handful of months. So thank you for all of that, Adele. Thank you for your leadership. Okay, so with that, I want to turn to my colleagues here in the room to see if anyone has any. Oh, I'm sorry, Director Houston.
Sure. And I'm really trying to make sure we're cognizant of time, but let me chime in real quick because I had a comment and a question for Adele. And one of the things, well, I'll just put these out there, a couple of things real quick. Number one, Adele, thank you for including the issue about the state audit and the outcome and the workforce issues at Metropolitan that have been brought to our attention and still need to be addressed. I'm glad that you are keeping that on the table. So let's not forget that as one of the member agencies. As far as you mentioned something about a water rate schedule, but I didn't hear the time frame for that. Can you let me know what was the schedule or the schedule for a time frame on that water?
Do we still have Adele? Looks like his image is frozen. Okay, looks like it's coming back there.
Can you hear me now? Okay, good.
Yeah.
So what I was going to say is the two things you have. One is the allocation discussion, and that's in response to the scarcity of water and the loss that we're going to see coming from the Colorado River, and continue to see the 5% allocation coming from the state water project. So that's going to happen, dialogue between now and probably the early part, probably January, February with the board. So we're going to be putting some requirements to ban watering, probably for 1 or 2 days a week, except for 1 or 2 days a week, or allocation. So it depends on which way you want to go. The second thing that we're working through is the business model discussion that we will have a discussion through a workshop with the board, is how we can sustain a financial system that can pay for the investments we need to do to ensure resiliency and help this infrastructure renewal without really bankrupting underserved communities and people that cannot afford the water cost. So we're trying to find, is there anything more that we need to look at? What are the options? What are the models? At the bottom line, we need to find a way that we can invest in resiliency, but how can we do it while incentivizing conservation and allowing for, maintaining affordability, especially for low-income communities, disadvantaged communities. And that discussion is going to happen over the next year.
Okay, good. Thank you.
And I want to just assure you on the first one, Director Houston, is that we have really moved the needle on addressing the workplace conditions. We have a new EO officer, chief EO officer. We have policies, training, and we have really remediated a lot of the past actions. And that's something is high priority for the board and myself. But I'll tell you, we have a DI officer who's really helping change the culture across the board to create a culture of inclusiveness. We have a LGBTQ work resource group now in Metropolitan called Pride. We have a disabled work group called Voice to represent disabled employees. We really are opening the door. And then we have also a new office for collaborating with tribal nations and Indian communities. And I'll tell you, I'm so proud of the team and what we've done so far. We just sent out a survey a few days ago to all employees to gauge where we are, because we know if you don't measure, you cannot manage. So we're trying to get a sense where we are right now with all the things we've done, where people still think an improvement is needed. So this is an ongoing effort, but I'll tell you, I'm so proud of the culture of We Are One, the culture of respect and inclusion. I believe in diversity and treating people the same, regardless what they look like, who they are, what they act, and who they believe in, and who they love. It doesn't matter, right? And that culture is there. I think we're working very hard on transforming the whole culture. But we have the best people working hard every single day. I'm deploying people in the desert to help ensure that the desert conditions are also ones that we can be proud of, and the communication is there, and ensuring that culture is everywhere in the organization. But I appreciate how you stress it, because without a healthy organization, you can't move forward.
Good, thank you, Adele. And one other comment, and then I do have, I think, a good question for you at the end here for me. But you know, I'm glad EJ brought up what I was thinking about. That's the LRP. So thanks for your comments on the LRP or where that might fit into the future of your whole model. Obviously, taking out grass, I still think is probably one of the biggest, most significant things we can all do, but it's a matter of how do we continue to finance it. So I know you all be looking at that. And so thanks for your answer to my question on that business model study and the rates, et cetera. Because I think you have touched on it. At the end of the day right now, we're just going to be counting on very ingenuitive leadership at Metropolitan. I mean, we don't have a choice, quite frankly, but we need really out-of-the-box, ingenuitive ideas coming from Met, but also the member agencies. You know, I'm looking forward to, as we get into the new year, having these, frankly, deeper conversations, because we need to figure this out. You know, we're really up against the wall on all of this in the West. So quite honestly, I'm looking forward to that because people are counting on us. And so one thing I want to ask a question here, at least from my perspective, because there is a lot going on right now. We're in political season. There's other things happening. But on the one hand, we are talking about a lot of negative stuff. But Adele, could you, in your words, what would be a positive message or a way to answer folks who are genuinely concerned about this water crisis, both from the Northern California area as well as the Colorado River? Because this is what we're hearing every day on the street. So can you give us a positive answer that we can tell people about the work we're doing right now?
Yeah. So the positive answer is we have done amazing work over the last 30 years. The water consumption we have today is the same as it was 30 years ago, right? And I'll tell you, you look at what we've done to reduce our dependence on imported water. 50% of the water we're using is locally sourced. But let me tell you the two examples for me that tells me that we can do it, and if we do it together. When we asked back in June for the state water project dependent areas on the western part of the service area to conserve, to go to 1 day of watering a week, or and then to do the allocation. What we saw is a 40% reduction in consumption. 40% in a short period of time of what we asked people to do the right thing. The grass may not be happy with it, but we can do it, 40%, right? So recently we did a shutdown on the on the feeder project on the project in Riverside, where we had the feeder that brings water, the upper feeder that brings water from the Colorado River. We had to do a quick emergency repair. And we went out there and asked people, 3 million people, including your service area, to conserve and not water outside, completely stop watering. And what we saw in 2-week period, and what we saw in those 2 weeks, almost 30% reduction in consumption. So now look at the 30% that were able to all come together and do when we needed to do it. The 40% were able to do on the west side. That tells me that we can do it. We can get and reduce our consumption by 30 to 40%. And that's going to help us sustain us. But it takes all of us working together. So I'm optimistic that we can do it. But at the same time, I don't want to shy away from the need for investments in recycled water, the investments in conveys, investments in storage, because every drop we can conserve, we should be able to store it somewhere that can help us in the future. But I believe in people in Southern California that they listen and they will heed the call. And I saw that the examples that I used are 2 positive examples of our communities responding in a very positive way.
Great, thank you for that, Adele. And I put you on the spot, but I thought that's a good answer. It's good to remind our residents and businesses of what we were able to accomplish. Yes, a little bit more of an emergency situation, but it shows we can do it. And then on the other side, when we look at these alternative water projects that we're all working on in our our local agencies as well as Met as a whole, and what Los Angeles is looking at, I mean, we do have a lot on the table right now that I think in the long run is going to sustain us. So again, it goes back to once we get into the holiday season and going into the new year, I'm looking forward personally to hearing these ideas and concepts that Metropolitan and others are going to come up with, Okay, I want to just, unless there is any last burning question, because I'm watching the clock, everybody, and I want to honor the time. Is there anybody else who wanted to put in one last question or opine, or are we good with Mr. Haji Khalil today?
And I don't see any hands here in the room, and I don't think we have any hands on the platform. So I think we're good, Director Houston.
Okay, good. So I'll go ahead and we'll start closing out the meeting. I want to say thank you, Adele, for being here virtually with us. We do appreciate it. I think you obviously hear some different questions and things that people are concerned with as you all put together your package for the board at Metropolitan to consider for ideas. And certainly, you hear my perspective as a board member at West Basin, as well as Director Catherman at WRD. So with that, I'm just going to roll through this agenda because we really we have no other items, I don't believe, or consent calendar or action calendar. Let's see, moving on. Pending items, no other items. Okay, so director's comments or future agenda items. I actually just had a question while I was sitting here thinking about it for our staff. I know we have our West Basin customer agency meetings. I don't recall if those were quarterly or what have you, but can you remind us, staff, the West Basin agency meeting that we conduct with our retailers?
And EJ, I believe that's the agency meeting that Gus Mesa coordinates.
Correct. Is that
Maybe turn off your speaker.
There we go.
Sorry. Yes, we do have a quarterly water use efficiency meeting where we invite all of our retailers to participate. We also actually have an operations meeting where we meet with all the operators from all the individual retailers as well. So there are multiple fronts. And of course, yesterday, we hosted the West Basin Water Association at the Edward C. Little Water Recycling Facility, which again is the better part of nearly all of our retailers.
Great, excellent. I just wanted that reminder to myself because of the fact I know you all meet quarterly with the retailers, but obviously that's your opportunity. I'm sure you do it, that you're parlaying what's going on at Metropolitan. So I think as we go into next year, those meetings are going to be extremely important. And I really do ask staff to do your best to outreach to our retailers that they are present and are getting that information relayed from us and Metropolitan. I think that's going to be very critical next year, these discussions we're just having. So with that, I have no future agenda items at this point. And I would just want to thank everyone for participating. And I hope you all have a good rest of your day. And with that, this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, everyone. And thank you,
Thank you.
Adele, for being with us today. Thank you for your presentation. All right. Take care, everyone.